welcome to our June 26, 2021 Diamond Valley Writers Guild General Meeting. I'm going to open today's meeting like I have with anybody, with any other meeting. Is there anyone out there who has any new writing news? You've started something, finished something, got something published? George.
Wang number 6 is out and available on Amazon, paperback or Kindle, either one. It's available.
Yay you.
Conflicted Justice.
What's the name of it?
Conflicted Justice.
Conflicted Justice. Okay, great. Terrific. Excellent. Anybody else have anything else? Only George today?
Well, we're all working hard. We just haven't got any milestones to report.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Okay. Well, I want to just point out something, a book that's kind of interesting. You can see it here. It's called The 100 Best Novels in English. And it's by a man named Robert McCrum, who wrote a very good book called The Story of English. But like most Americans, we love lists of things. This is a terrific book. It's heavy on the English writers early, but by the time he gets to the 20th century,
this is my meeting.
What?
Somebody's talking to somebody.
But at any rate, it's an excellent. It's fun to read, and he goes through these 100 novels, discussing them. And he's has an excellent selection, and of course, any 100 list that includes The Great Gatsby has me right off the bat. So, at any rate, it is a terrific book. It's fun to read, and he starts with the oldest. He doesn't rank them like 1 to 100 best. He ranks the top 100, but he goes by date. And so you almost get like a history of the novel from what he's picked. It's really a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It's that kind of book. Karen, you have a question.
I'm a slow reader. If I bought that book, could I get credit for reading all those 100 novels?
As far as I'm concerned, you can.
I mean, would it tell me enough about them that I would have
Like Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
No, he gives you a critical analysis of the book, but I don't think he gives you all those details you need.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay. Well, let's move on. Next, I'm going to call on Lynn here for Facebook. You have anything you want to say about the Facebook, Lynn?
No, just my usual encouragement to people to check in at our Facebook page, because everyone, an awful lot of people, a lot of members of the Guild are generous with posting links to helpful, articles on craft and marketing. And also, if you would like to, when you post something just as a visitor, your post goes off to the side and it's kind of little. But if you are an editor of the Facebook page, then your post, it's just like being on your own Facebook page, and you get like star billing. You're right in the middle and everybody sees your post. If you would like to be an editor, just let me know. We could use a few more. And the term editor doesn't mean you have any official jobs. It just means you get to post things in a way that people can actually see them. So that's kind of helpful. So let me know if you want to be an editor on the Diamond Valley Facebook page.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Michelle, you have anything on membership you'd like to add?
Sure, I'll always have something on membership. Let me get back to that screen. So currently we do have 60 paid members of the Guild at this point. Anyone who is not currently a member and would like to join, I'm gonna stick some information into the chat regarding how you can do that. It's not mandatory to become an official member. The fee is only $20 a year, so it's not that much. Helps us do things like pay for our Zoom subscription to bring these to everyone, and our PO box and our filing fees to be a nonprofit. There's a little bits of expenses. Everyone who's a member of the board, we're all volunteer, so none of us get paid for doing this. So you don't have to worry about your dues being relegated into somebody's, Starbucks budget or something. That isn't going to happen. But that's about it. But there's information. It's real easy to become a member. It's, like I said, $20. You can do PayPal and that's the simplest way. Or you can send a check to the PO box and kind of go from there. The benefits are discounts at Cameron's Books. You're able to then vote. You're also able to submit your writing to Straight Jackets Magazine, which I put that link into the chat as well. So that's really all I
And
had.
the book page.
Oh,
And the
yeah,
book
sorry.
page.
Okay. And Lynn, yes, the webmistress reminded me, since she handles that. If you are a published author, then you can list your books on our members' published author book page with links that helps other members and people at large find you on Amazon or your website or whatever. So there is a bit of a marketing advantage to that as well. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Lynn, I forgot to ask you, you checked with the library again. What did the library
I
say?
did. Thank you. I got a flat no, that they don't know anything yet. And I thought, I'm going to drive by and see if people are going in. Maybe it's just us. We haven't been using our deodorant in the last couple of in real life meetings or something. But
it's open. But
it says it's open, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're opening up for groups to have meetings.
Exactly.
Oh,
I mean,
know
that.
And I think it's the numbers that they don't want to deal with.
Yeah. Well, they're being real careful. It's a civic organization and they're going to go really slowly. But I would think with the governor opening up the state 100%, it wouldn't be that long before we can get back there. But as of about a week ago, the director of the library told us that July, she doesn't know anything. She has no news from her board.
Yeah, well, I think we'll have to keep at least here for at least one more month.
Somebody,
yeah.
And we'll kind of do it month by month and see what happens.
Absolutely. Karen, what?
Somebody I know meets there for a quilting group, and she said the same thing. They haven't been given a date, and they were still pushing them pretty far out. So
that's what it feels like.
It's not just us. It's other.
Oh, I'm glad to know that.
Do all of you know that the Diamond Valley Arts Guild has folded?
What?
Oh, they just got rid of their venue. They could no longer afford their venue. I don't believe that they folded.
Well, then, if they, how are they meeting? If they don't have the venue?
There was I just got something from them, and they were meeting at some community center or something. So I don't believe the organization is still alive.
Okay,
They just couldn't, through COVID, maintain the rent on that beautiful facility on Harvard, unfortunately, because it's not cheap. And they just could not afford the rent because they were bringing in zero revenue from having shows. But they're still doing it because the Harvard Street Theater Company, in connection with Diamond Valley Arts, is presenting their first live production at the end of July. So they're already in rehearsals.
July 10th.
July 10th. Yeah, Jerry, you want to speak to that?
July 10th at the, oh man, I'm going to call it the Boob Church. I'm sorry. You know where I mean? Gerard
and Stetson.
Gerard and Stetson. July 10th.
It's the Christian Science, Church of Christian Science, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, but I think that they're still affiliated. I think Harvard Street Theater Company is still affiliated with Diamond Valley.
Right.
Arts. So they're still alive. They're still a nonprofit. They just don't have a venue anymore.
Okay, well, that's good to know that they're still alive. Of course, the building's been shut down for some time now.
Yeah, they just couldn't pay their rent, which, that happened to a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah.
We have Sandy is not here, and her writing tip. I'm going to give a quick one today, just a writing tip. We've discussed this before in the writing group, and I'd like to talk just a brief moment. If you're writing fiction, one of the things that you always have to deal with is point of view, and essentially there's 3 points of view when you're writing. There's the first person, which is I, right? The second one is an omniscient, fully omniscient, which means like God-like, and you can go in from one viewpoint to another. And then what is most 20th century authors have used when you're writing third person is the limited omniscient. In other words, you're going through, it's third person, but you're going through the viewpoint of only one character. I like both that viewpoint and the first person narrative, personally. They each have an advantage. The I gets you closer to your characters, one character. And there is a real intimacy there because you're in that particular viewpoint for the whole book. The other, limited omniscient, you can change from viewpoint to viewpoint, like with some kind of break, chapter break or break within the chapter, something like that, and you can change viewpoints. It's a little more distancing, but you have more scope, a greater breadth to it. It's a real choice. I mean, it's a choice that you really have to be careful of. Writing in multiple viewpoints, the fully omniscient is, most writers just don't do it today. I don't know of a major writer or a writer who is, even minor writers tend not to do that. So that one you get is a bit of a problem. So if anybody has a question about viewpoints, there is another viewpoint. There's a second person, you. I've actually seen a couple of short stories use that approach. I don't like it, but you know, that's me. But I'm not a big fan of that. I like a first or third person approach, and I personally prefer past tense. It's not to say I even have read a couple of books I like there in present tense, but that's something else. If I have a question you'd like to ask from my point of view.
Yes, why does it seem like so many books these days are written in first person present tense? Is that a thing, or am I just noticing it?
No, you may be noticing it more. Although I believe that I think it is more. I read one Joyce Carol Oates book that she did in present tense that I loved, but most bother me a little bit. And I can't, you know, I'm so used to past tense, but I do think that probably more are writing. Maybe it's because more books are being published. You know, I don't know, but yes, I've noticed.
It is definitely a trend, and I notice it more in young adult.
Right. What I was going to
That's
say.
interesting. Yeah.
I see it a lot in romance. I read a lot of romance and women's fiction. I see it a lot in romance.
There is, I think if it's done really well, that present tense does offer an immediacy.
Yeah.
And perhaps that is what the authors are trying for. And I think probably it works with some authors can do it.
I'm getting used to it. I didn't used to like it, but I'm starting to, I don't notice it that much anymore. It works.
Anybody else have another question or point you'd like to make on that? Well, so much for my tip today.
Thank you.
Straight jackets. Cheryl, you have something.
Yeah, Ellen sent out this morning a call for submissions. The deadline, we pushed it from, I think we had it July 1st. We pushed it to July 15th. I'll put in the chat the link. It's at straightjacketsmagazine@gmail.com. Anyway, we've gotten some submissions in, so thank you. And we're looking for more. So don't be afraid.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything you want to say. Where are
Be
you?
brave.
Be brave, yeah.
She ran off.
Oh, she ran off. Okay.
Yes.
She did. I don't know where she went. Okay.
All right. Great. I want to just say one other quick thing about straight jackets. You guys have done a great job with straight jackets, and I want to let you know that. And I'm sure people will really appreciate it. I think it looks great. You've done a really terrific job. I love the fact that the archives are there. You can go back and see things that have been written in the past. But it looks great, and you've had some great material from the members in there. I've really been impressed. Okay.
Cheryl, well, tell me that date again. You changed the submission date from
July 15th.
Is now the date, the deadline? Okay.
The day after Bastille Day.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
The next, we're going to have Michelle is going to introduce our speaker, although most of us already know him, but Michelle.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna pretty much read what you probably already read in his bio, except I'm gonna change it up a little bit. because I know Dennis personally, and I think he is a terrific writer. He has turned most of his attention to children's literature in the last year or so, and I think that was a good choice on his part. And through doing that, he's acquired an agent, and the agent is working actively at this point to guide him in not only getting published and polishing his work, but also creating his platform, which I know he's not talking about platform today, but he's a wealth of information on the latest on how to create that platform. And in this case, his agent having him do this well in advance of any of his children's books coming out to the public or even being shown to an editor, which I find fascinating. That's an important thing. He's a professor of speech communications for the last 16 years, or was a professor of speech communications for 16 years at Barstow Community College. He's taught both public and speaking and English. He also was a member of the board of directors here for Diamond Valley Writers Guild and served as our recording secretary. He is a fellow of the National Writing Project and a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And he has a certificate in teaching English as a foreign language from the University of California. He and his wife, Diane, taught speech and English 10 summers overseas. His first published articles on business and politics appeared in the 1980s. And since then, he's been published in regional and international journals, anthologies of personal essays, including 3 of the short and sweet books, and in our own Straight Jackets magazine. Otherwise, at this point, I think he's our resident authority on children's literature, with his picture books taking the lead. So I will turn it over to Dennis with one caveat. If you have any questions, either hold them to the end, or if you can put them in the chat and we'll field them as it's appropriate. Go ahead, Dennis.
I'm going to mute everybody, Dennis, and you unmute yourself, will you please? All right.
There we go. Let's just start out with some can you hear me okay? Okay. Let's just go ahead and start with some fun with language. And I'm going to start with some similes that you might know. And as you know, those are comparing things using as or like. If you work hard, you work like a. If you are very strong, you are strong as a. If you're very busy, you're busy as a bee. Oh, I gave it away. Yay, I got some smiles there. A metaphor, and for all of you who are not as young as you used to be, I'm going to have a throwback question, and it is, for a metaphor, Linda Ronstadt sang, love is a, anybody know love is a rose? And then life is a, whatever you put there, life is a journey. And I just want to go ahead and talk a little bit about my writing journey over the years. And I was fortunate to look back out in the garage, and I found some early archival material that shares that I was a writer and have been a reader over the years. And here is a copy of Humpty Dumpty. And some of you might remember this from way back when. It has a lot of activities and children's stories in it. Here's a Donald Duck comic book. Today, what we have is we have graphic novels. Now, you also are, I'm sure, familiar with the little golden books that we had. And here's a couple of these. I have this one, Peter Pan, and that was fun for me. But then I have evidence of my writing when I was 8 to 10 years old. And I'd like to just share this with you. Here is a picture of a cow. And I drew that, and I have some writing that my mom framed when I was very young. And I'm going to go ahead and share it with you because we all have a writing journey. Think about yours. This one starts, the dairy cow. We went to see a cow today. It was a Guernsey. These cows are brown and white. We saw a calf too. He was a Guernsey too. There are 3 different kinds of cows, Guernseys, Holsteins, and Jerseys. The cow is one of the most useful animals to man. The first cows came to America and were brought by Columbus from Spain on his second voyage in 1493. Dennis Conrad. So I just want you to know I've had a journey that starts back then, but it was interrupted. in terms of my reading capability, because when I was in the 5th grade, I was in the 3rd reading group. And I was always in those lower reading groups when I was in a few years before that. And I ended up having a teacher who said, have you ever had your eyes checked? And I got glasses and my world changed. It really opened up. So that's part of my journey. But now I want to go ahead and shift and talk specifically about the children's market. And I need to do this. There we go. And let's go ahead and you see all of the different kinds of books there. Shout out some of the kinds of books that you used to like as a kid. And you're not able to do that here as a group, and I'm not able to hear those, but I want you to know you had obviously books that you loved when you were a kid, and you can think back about that. Now, we might sometimes walk into a room and forget what we are looking for, or younger people might have a phone that they've misplaced and they're looking for it, or they're looking for their glasses on the top of, and they're on the top of their head. But we remember the children's books, some of them so vividly. And I just want to go ahead and let's go to, let's see what's happening here. I'm having a little bit of a technical glitch here, and I don't know what it is. And so I'm going to go ahead and hop off for a second. Okay, I'm going to come back. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to screen share again.
Don't you just love technical difficulties? It's always a lot of fun.
Oh, well, that's weird. And we have I know what's happening over here.
I just, while he's fooling around with that,
Yeah, please talk. Yeah.
I just discovered that on my screen, if I see his share screen, but there's a kind of a gray line between people and that shared screen. And if you click on it, well, now it's changed, but you can make the sharing smaller and you can still see the people on the other side. Kind of interesting.
It says, there we go. Hey, we finally found it. There was a little note there, and for some reason, and even though we had a sound check, let's go ahead and begin again to just know that I'm going to be writing for, talking about writing for the children's market. And I'm excited about this because we really have a lot of different kinds of children's books to talk about. I want to go ahead and share with you a quote from C.S. Lewis. And he says, a children's story that can only be enjoyed by children is not a good children's story in the slightest. When we think about the market for children's stories and children's books, and we start to think about the different audiences that we reach, we not only reach the children, we reach the adults who are going to be buying the book. That can be the parents or grandparents or other relatives, friends. We also have, if we're trying to get an agent, the agent would be a person who would be reading the material and would be a member of an audience. You have publishers who will look at it. When you have a self-published book, you're going to have the audience that is out there, and it might include affinity groups. And sometimes a group of people will get a hold of a book and it will go viral. And so that's very exciting. Write with intent is one of my goals to talk about today. I want you to be intentional about what you write. We're going to have fun with language for the first few minutes. We had a couple of metaphors and similes there, but know your genre, other markets, and summarizing with some poetry there. And let's just talk about this. Do you change the language for different age groups? Preschool children are going to have a different language level. Students in middle school and high school, or young professionals or senior citizens, all of these are going to have a certain style language that is appropriate to the audience that you're going to be writing to. And as we realize this, I want to talk a little bit more about some of these figures of speech. And this one is personification, giving human qualities to abstract ideas. I think one of the fun things about this book is that it really has an exciting story, but it has turned the bear and this little mouse into live action here for us. And I'll just say that the bear even has a refrigerator. So talk about personification there. Hyperbole is another one of these kind of word terms that has to do with figures of speech, but we use the obvious exaggeration. And many of you are familiar with Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Fun techniques that we can use in our own writing. How about more onomatopoeias? This whole idea of natural sounds in word form, click, clack, quackity, quack, or chicka, chicka, boom, boom, which is one of Howard's terms that he likes to use. I'll just tell you, there's another onomatopoeia that ends up in a brand new book. This is from 2021. Lincoln Clears a Path, and it's Abraham Lincoln's agricultural legacy. And if with dense forest, cleared brush, pulled stumps, and plowed fields, there are different onomatopoeias that are connected at the very beginning. So thwack, swish, thrump, yah, yah, like you're having a horse in the plowed field. All of these end up repeating throughout this story, and they end up telling about how he is using the same words to cut through the political process and change lives with his different kinds of policies and things. Let's go to this one. This is, there once was a man who in the street who rap-a-tap-tap, think of that, is what it says are the first lines, but rap-a-tap-tap is an example of a person who's a tap dancer. Here's Bojangles, think of that. And I just want to let you know that when we have onomatopoeias, they're great for children's books. Antithesis and allusion. I want to go ahead and quote Neil Armstrong here. From the moon, he's saying, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But the illusion of a book that is called Moon's Best Friends is one giant leap, and it actually uses that to refer back to Neil Armstrong's quotation. Let's notice something else, and repetition really comes up, and obviously we had the rap-a-tap-tap there, but also I have a dream speech for adults. It is classic, but Martin Luther King used, I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. And these kinds of ideas can be great in children's books. Just so you know, we also have arranging words, phrases, and sentences in a similar form. Abraham Lincoln, of the people, by the people, for the people, and play with language so you can be an effective communicator here and really get across your ideas using some of these techniques. More figures of speech, understatement by minimizing or lowering something's important, you can draw attention to it. Irony, use humor, satire, or sarcasm to suggest a meaning other than the one actually being expressed. Let's talk about changing now for a moment and think about the terms and the words that are used in nonfiction. If we're using sequence of time and events, it would be logical for essays or a lot of technical writing to use first, second, and third or whatever. But even in a little bit older children's books, you're going to realize that first, second, and third might work earlier, today, in the past, until now, to show time. How about cause and effect? Therefore, as a result, and thus would be for a little older reader. But if you're going to be writing for kids, you might use, instead of as a result, you'd use the word because. And then showing comparisons. In comparison, the same way, the same and different. we use these terms and we want to be effective when we're using our language. And then to contrast ideas, however, and yet at the same time and in spite of. And so as again, these are a little bit, you notice the language changes when you're in this kind of mode. And you'll see that when I give you first lines of books that I have coming up. But to summarize, in conclusion, in summary, finally, altogether. We don't use these terms typically when we're writing fiction. And the reason is because we're going to go ahead and have our story do the conclusion, and the scene is going to come alive for us. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about character development. And character development has an issue in the children's market. There is a debate between whether or not to use children, for more example, or who are real people, or to use animals. There is an article that was in The Guardian a number of years ago, and it talked about the fact that it's better to use children. And then when other authors were written about, wrote about, asked questions, they said, no, animals are better because they provide some distance. And so this becomes helpful that way to go ahead. But I want you to know that you can have both animals and children in books, and that makes it even more exciting. Notice this, the SCBWI is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. They have a summer conference if you're interested in continuing education. They're celebrating 50 years this year. I'm signed up for this. It's about $150 or thereabouts. Let me just let you know that this comes from the book. And I'll just mention the book is phenomenal. It's got all kinds of resources and information that can be helpful for you. This book came out, this 2021 version came out about 5 weeks ago. It has in it children's editors, children's publishers. It tells what their expectations are, criteria, whether you submit a query letter. It's got comprehensive material. I recommend joining the organization if you're interested in this book. And this book costs under $10 if you're a member. So note that they really try to take care of their members. But if you just sign up with a membership, I think you actually get the book as a online version. So you can go ahead and have that. Nothing with that. Okay, and so here we are. I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about genre, number of type pages, and typical age. And I won't mention all of the ages, but you can kind of see as I go through this. For board books, and I'll show you some samples, a half page to 1 page is what you write. And I want to let you know about the market. I was at a conference recently, and one of the people who publishes that level of book was actually saying, if you have a text and you would like to submit it to me, please go ahead, reference the conference, and please send it to me directly. And so you can find books and go directly to publishers. Oftentimes it works with a conference because the people know that you are interested in the field and you're willing to go ahead and attend there. But there are board books that are being published. But the trend is, as you see some of these books, you'll see they're established books that are picked up and done as a board book. Picture books, 2 to 3 pages. It's a little bit longer today. This really references an under 500 word manuscript. But today, manuscripts are up to 1,000 words depending, and you see the age range for that. Independent readers, 10 to 20. Chapter books, 40 to 60 words. Middle grade, 100 to 250. And then young adult novels, 200 to 350. And you see the age ranges there. And then note this, genre and number of type pages for nonfiction is going to vary by the topic and the age. There's poetry for young readers, and that might only have 15 to 40 pages. And then poetry for older readers, the 50 to 150 pages. And I'll show you a Shell's Silverstein book a little later. And then this book is The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Now this happens to be a unique version because it's a baby teething crinkle book, but Eric Carle wrote this book, and let's see. Eric's book is famous, And one of the reasons it's famous is because it has holes and it teaches the days of the week, and it's got wonderful colors, and it talks about the hungry caterpillar actually eating through the pages. And so it is very fun and energetic, and it's a very short book, but is, and there is an Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art that people can visit if you end up being near Boston, and you can go to Amherst, Massachusetts. But let me tell you that this book also happens to be very exciting from the standpoint of the fact that it's sold 55 million. So there is a market for children's books. Be excited about that. And it's sold somewhere in the world every 30 seconds. Board and picture books. This book is available in both. Rainbow Fish is a popular title. And let me go through now some picture books. Let's start with a Caldecott Award winner. And a Caldecott is an award that is for illustration. And this book is called We Are Water Protectors. And it has back matter. Now, there's a great story, and it talks about, and you'll see from the back matter what it's about. It's about protecting water and water conservation, that type of thing. But there is bonus material in the trade. It is called back matter. And so sometimes you can write a children's book and then have the last few pages dedicated to nonfiction material. So this is a nonfiction children's book, but because it has some room in the back, the writer was able to go ahead and add some additional information, including more on water protectors, description of the Dakota Access Pipeline, Standing Rock Protectors and the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, glossary of Native American terms, and Earth Steward and Water Protector Pledge are there. I took something from Amazon to go ahead and show you the book details of this book. You can see the reading age. If you are trying to become familiar with the market for children's books, you can find on Amazon the level of reading and start to get an idea. Now, this book is unusual because it's 40 pages. Typical children's books are 32 pages or 24 pages, but this 40-page book hit the mark there with preschool and first grade students. And I want to show you something else. If you are trying to make sure your writing is at the right level for the children's group that you're working with, and you want to do that, I have a parenthetic note here. On Pro Writing Aid, you can actually get third grade reading from examples, and you can you put it into, if you have Pro Writing Aid, you put it into the summary section, and you'll be able to have that. Now, with regard to Microsoft Word, you actually have you have to turn it on Microsoft Word. So Google it, and you'd be able to find out how to do that. But once you put a manuscript through, you're going to have an idea of a Flesch Kincaid grade level. So as you write, now notice something. This manuscript is a children's book manuscript that I have. It's 961 words, under the 1,000. But you notice my sentence per paragraph is really small. It's 2.2. So it kind of gives you an idea of the short, sweet, get in and get out type of thing there. Next, Coretta Scott King Award. Rap-a-Tap-Tap I mentioned, but there is a silver sticker on the Rap-a-Tap-Tap book that I have. But here is the Coretta Scott King Award, and it's awarded annually to outstanding African-American authors and illustrators for books and children of young adults, demonstrating appreciation of African-American culture and universal human values. Here is Back Matter. Again, that was a nonfiction book, and this book has the information at the back about Bill Bojangles Robinson. 1878 to 1949 is known as the greatest tap dancer of all time. His fame has reached mythic proportions. He had charm and charisma, and it is said he talked with his feet. So realize there are aspects of the writing market that we're learning about from the back matter. You've learned a little bit about even making sure that your book targets the right level. And now let's go into some children's books. And here's Bernstein Bears. It was Christmas Eve deep in bear country, and the whole bear family was busy turning their treehouse home into one big Christmas tree. Don't forget the seasonal market. It's very important. Holidays are excellent for being able to write children's books, and they're very popular. When Pigs Fly, I talked to a school teacher who was telling me that she really enjoyed this book, reading it with her grandkids. Now, This book is self-published at this point. It had a publisher originally in Canada. The author, Valerie Coleman, the publisher went out of business. She was able to get back the rights, and she also knew the illustrator. The illustrator ended up coming up with new pictures. They changed a little bit, and so now it is out as a self-published book. In a meadow, and the words starting in the book are, "In a meadow near the city lived a cow named Ralph. Ralph wanted his dad to buy him a bicycle. But Ralph, his dad said, 'Cows don't ride bikes.' 'Not yet they don't,' Ralph replied. Finally, his dad said, 'Okay, Ralph, I'll buy you a bike when pigs fly.'" And Ralph ends up learning how to fly a helicopter. Okay, so you got to have some fun there with that. An Elephant in a Piggy book. This is a 64-page book. And it starts out, "I am one lucky pig. I have a lot to be thankful for." Let me just share this. This is a nonfiction book, and I'll share it too. You'll get a sense of how this book comes alive. And I want you to think about the senses. As a children's writer, you want to really include the senses. On the morning of July 1st, 1863, the peaceful little town of Gettysburg awoke early as usual. Front porches were swept clean, feather beds aired, and blackberry jam bubbled on the stove. I can see a few of you. Raise your hand if you can smell that blackberry jam. Okay, you can, and you can, it's right there for us. That's the kicker. This one is called Showway. It is about showway quilts. And what are showway quilts? They are actually showing the way to the North during slavery, the time of slavery. And a quilt would be put out by plantation slaves. And as a runaway slave would go by, they'd be able to see the equivalent of a map. They would see rivers, or they would see the star constellations that were to guide them to the north. And so that is what a showway quilt is. And this book begins when Suni's great grandma was 7. She was sold from the Virginia land to a plantation in South Carolina without her ma or pa, but some muslin her ma had given her. And muslin is a fabric made of cotton, and it would have gone with her. And this is the story of this woman's, Jacqueline Woodson's family history there. Don't again forget holiday market, but also just faith issues. Once upon a time there was, and this is St. Nicholas and the 9 gold coins. And St. Nicholas in this story was an orphan. He had been given an inheritance of 9 gold coins. And as a young boy, he throws coins over the top of a wall into a family's home where the family needed dowry money. And that dowry money ended up being used to marry off the daughters, but there were 3 daughters and 3 coins each time. But the very last time, Nicholas, who'd kept his identity secret, is identified. And the mother tells one friend, and then a mother tells another friend, and everyone knows what Nicholas has done, and he ends up becoming the bishop in this city. Now, here's another example of animals, amphibians in this case. Frog and Toad are friends. I asked a young mother what her children were reading, and this child is already reading this level at about 4.5. Frog ran up the path to the Toad's house. He knocked on the front door. There was no answer. "Toad, Toad," shouted Frog. "Wake up, it's spring." And you can see the different level of writing that you have from the 2 that I had just had to this one, much lower level, but really there. And then chapter books. Now, Magic Treehouse is a huge series that not only has sold a lot, but has many different little, great little stories. And I just love this one. And this is a story about the Civil War on Sunday. So here's what happens with this treehouse to start with. One summer day in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania, a mysterious treehouse appeared in the woods. 8-year-old Jack and his 7-year-old sister Annie climbed into the treehouse. They found that it was filled with books. Now this treehouse ends up going from place to place and taking the kids on adventures. Notice something. Notice the front cover. You got kids helping kids. This is a commonplace for people who are going to write children's book. One don't that I've read on many websites is do not have the parents swoop in and solve the problems for the kids. It's really different. You want to go ahead and make sure that the kids are doing all of the activity and they do it. Now, I'm going to show you the next book, and it's got the parents involved at the very beginning. A grandfather comes in for a little while, but the rest of the book is all about the solving of the problem. This is Greetings from Somewhere, The Mystery of the Gold Coin. So what's the surprise? Ethan Breyer asked. Yeah, what is it, Mom and Dad? Ethan's twin sister Ella chimed in. So you've got a boy and a girl in these situations solving this, appealing to both male and female. Then middle grade graphic novel. Let me just go ahead and tell you, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I talked to a lady who's 20 something now. She's 22 or so. I asked her, did you like Diary of a Wimpy Kid? And she said, and just so you know, this is a graphic novel. And it is sold over 200 million copies because it can be translated into other languages because of its graphics. But here's how this starts out. And notice the tone of language. It says, it's September, Tuesday. First of all, let me get something straight. This is a journal, not a diary. I know what it says on the cover, but when Mom went out to buy this thing, I specifically told her, get one that didn't say diary on it. So you kind of have a funny humorous edge that this Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So know that it appeals. And my friend, who's the young lady, said that she read all of the whole series and loved them. I did talk to a librarian about Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And I said, did you like it? And she said, no, it seemed like the kids were mean. So be careful about the content. And sometimes within a matter of years, the content will become bullying or something like that. And I heard the Wonky Donkey had elements that had parents going out to buy the book because of a viral video. But then when the kids heard it, they said, this is bullying. And so you got to be very careful with the line that you draw there. Young adult fiction, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Hunger Games are two examples. Other books in this genre have been made into movies. Ender's Game is an example, but a lot of very excellent writing here that has a lot of attention. Here's nonfiction, Escape to Freedom. Elijah P. Mars crouched in a ditch by the side of the road. He and his companions hid as the rumble of wheels thundered past them. They waited nearly half an hour. Then, frightened and weary, they continued their 20-mile, 32-kilometer trek through the night. And so we have a completely different view here in terms of nonfiction. Here's more nonfiction. I Survive series. There's a whole series of these books about all different eras in history. America was under attack with Pearl Harbor. Hundreds of bomber planes were swarming over Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. They swooped down, machine guns roaring, bombs and torpedoes rained down. And then a last one here in terms of a nonfiction series. And notice this one, the language of who was P.T. Barnum? At last, the big day was here. Phineas Taylor Barnum was about to see the property that made him the wealthiest boy in Bethel, Connecticut. So as you see, the language is different, the age range may be different, but the good thing is that it accomplishes the goal for the writer and for the audience. Graphic novels. Just imagine you have in pictorial form the layout for a movie, and you're going to use this layout to effectively tell a story like storyboarding. And this book is phenomenal. Read it in 15 minutes. It is a storyboard about an heiress and her stepmother. The father has died, and there's a fortune that has been left to the daughter. But the evil stepmother is going to go ahead and try to get the money. And Snow White actually goes out on the street, is harassed initially by a group of 7 little boys, and ultimately they take her in, and when she inherits the money, they become the equivalent of her wards, and she takes them in, and it's very exciting. And then manga. I do not want to leave this category out. When I was in the library talking to a librarian and asking about the children's market, I found, she said, there's a whole area here. It's read by adults, everybody, but younger readers will read this 12 up. Naruto, the Challengers. Here's the back cover copy. Naruto is a ninja in training with an incorrigible knack for mischief. His wild antics amuse his teammates, but Naruto is completely serious about one thing, becoming the world's greatest ninja. I don't know if you know, but when you read these books, you read them from the back. And you start in the back because it's a Japanese product, and it flows that way in English. A memoir in verse. I want to go ahead and share this book with you. It's a massive award winner, National Book Awards established by the National Books Foundation. Young People's Literature is what it is awarded for. The Newbery Medal. The Newbery Medal actually is having an anniversary next year. Maybe the Guild would even want to do something in honor of that to try to build membership. But it's given to the author of the most distinguished American children's book of the previous year. And this children's book, I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of it for you. I want you to know that it has got verse, okay? The whole book is verse. And I'm going to begin on page 1, February 12th, 1963. I was born on a Tuesday at University Hospital, Columbus, Ohio, USA, a country caught between black and white. I am born not long from the time or far from the place where my great-great-grandparents worked the deep, rich land unfree, till dawn till dusk, unpaid, drank cool water from scooped out gourds, looked up and followed the sky's myriad constellation to freedom. And as you can see, it even parallels the idea of Shoei in that content. Write your own children's book. Here we go. Let me give you some ideas. I just want to encourage you. What I have here is off to this side is a template. And I make a simple template. I've got page 1 for the title page. Then for 2 and 3, I just have in parentheses here, and 4 and 5, 6 and 7, all the way up. And I've got some spaces in there, and I can go ahead and structure my story where I've got an introduction. I know in page 32, which is standalone by itself, is going to have a conclusion. I can know, and let's just put it this way, there is everything in the story is going to have that makes up the story are the characters, dialogue, intrigue, rising and falling action, and more. And for the people who are new to the Guild, we have discussions on characters and dialogues and how to have the rising and falling action through our meetings. But with the content, then there's something else. I want to put a star down here and just let you know. Create your own template based on Katie Tastic's YouTube presentation. How did I come by this particular presentation? A friend of mine, Mizu Andrews, is a writer who specializes in historical fiction. And what she found was that she happened to be at a writer's retreat. She was all alone and had been very productive in her research and sat down to write the first page. And looking at a blank screen, she said, I don't know how to start this novel. Now, she didn't panic. She looked up on Google and she ended up finding Katie Tastic, a 16, 17-minute video. And I've watched the video and it's phenomenal. And why? As it says on the material down here, she wrote a video on how I outlined 3 acts, 9 blocks, and 27 chapters. And what she did is the 9 blocks end up working real well for the pages of a children's book. Because if you've got 15 spreads, and I'll go ahead and show you, here's a spread. You have the title page, which is page 1. Okay. And then you have page 2 and 3. You can see. And so what's happening here is as you turn the pages, you can figure out what you're going to write on each one of the pages. There's 3 and 4. Now, the goal here is to be able to have like a midpoint, as I said, and have your introductory, body, and conclusion. But mainly, you're going to be able to start having an inciting incident under 2 and 3, and that'll get you going with your book. Let me go ahead. Do you include illustrator notes? I'll just point out here, this says illustrator notes. And do you have illustrator notes or not? Big debate in the industry for years, but now it is pretty much solidified that you, to include them or not to include them, I'll give you a preface here. What's an illustrator note? It's information to clarify the author's idea for an illustration. It's shown inside of parentheses. Now, the tip, use the text to describe action instead of an illustrator note. And here's an example from my book, The 2-Cent Piece, which deals with the first coins within God we trust. Original with the illustrator note. My illustrator note read, Patrick puts his coin on the table and pushes it to his mother. Then, and he says, Mother, keep my coin, Patrick said. You have powerful faith, but I have doubts. Now, the edited version came back to me. Mother, keep my coin, Patrick said. He pushed it toward her on the table. You have powerful faith, but I have doubts. And I think the key thing here is the illustrator note is telling the content the way the edited version works is it really is showing. We want to go ahead instead of, you don't want to tell, you want to show your material. And then with regard to poetry, this is another section that we're going to go into now for a few minutes, but I want to give you.
Hey, Dennis.
Yes.
I've had in the chat to be able to ask questions between the sections because
okay.
Is that possible?
Might best to get finished with it and then we'll save them to the end. Can we do that? And then we'll go back through each one of the sections. Would that be okay?
It's your presentation.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think we'll do that and then I'll be finished here shortly. Let's go with poetic rhyme crimes. One of the crimes is not writing your poetry. Another is not editing your poetry, not reading your work out loud, and be careful with near rhymes. And there are other rhyme crimes which are actually about the content, but can you imagine an editor getting something which reading is rhymed with eating? And that is actually a question that came up on the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators on their Blue Board. And it was commented, but probably an editor would have problems with that. And repeating words over and over, and notice that I put the words over and over there to reiterate. Let's go to the next thing here. Plato said, every man is a poet when he's in love, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge said, poetry is the best words in the best order. Now, in poetry, we have alliteration, a repetition of the same sounds, usually initial consonants. There are other ways to do this, but how many people can finish this? She sells seashells down by the, you all know this, seashore. Let's realize that Mother Goose has Storytime Nursery Rhymes. And let me just, you want your children's book to be so effective that kids can recite it, they can do different things with it. And here's an example of clapping along with something. Peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot, 9 days old. Some like it hot, some like it cold, some like it in the pot, 9 days old. So you want to go ahead and get the kids to the point where they can respond, they can be involved, and they can be active with it. Let's go with the cat in the hat. The sun did not shine, it was too wet to play. So we sat in the house all that cold, cold, wet day. I sat there with Sally, we sat there, we two. And I said, how I wish we had something to do. Some of you can repeat the rest of the cat in the hat right from this point on. Mr. Brown can moo, can you? Dr. Seuss's Book of Wonderful Noises. Oh, the wonderful things Mr. Brown can do. He can go like a cow. He can go moo moo. Mr. Brown can do it. How about you? Interactive again. This is really using these techniques that we get examples from. Dr. Seuss, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, black fish, blue fish, old fish, new fish. Again, the repetition, exciting for kids. It works, and it's just an excellent. And here's Dr. Seuss. Oh, say, can you say, oh, my brothers, my sisters, oh, my sisters, these are terrible tongue twisters. And it's fun. And I want to tell you, if you got the blues from COVID-19, go out and get some children's books and start reading them. You're going to love them. Said a book reading parrot named Huey, the words in this book are phooey. When you say them, your lips will make slips and back flips, and your tongue will end up in St. Louis. I hope you're smiling with these. Okay, now let me give you a way to generate your own poetry. And I want to go ahead and give you an idea here. It's called found poetry. And the idea of content analysis by some literary scholars was to go ahead and look at poems from the 1800s and later and find where the ideas came from for these poems. And what they started to find is a lot of headlines would be used, or keywords from headlines. Other literature would be used, and it would find its way into the poetry of leading poets. And so I'm going to give you a 6-step model to be able to put together your own poetry quickly, efficiently, and first of all, you generate a word list. Now, I actually generated a poem one time from an advertising brochure for a fishing trip company that would take people on deep sea fishing. And I circled the keywords that I liked. I ended up writing them down, so I generated the word list. Then you maintain the sequencing to start with. And step number 3 is you make choices because you cut the list in half. Now you listen for things to eliminate. You listen for the dull words, listen for the unnecessary words, listen for sounds of words by sounding out each word and phrase. Bad or unpleasant sounding words are out, and then you listen for anything that doesn't work, out of place, or doesn't somehow distract. So you get the words out, and you've got your list, and it might be a pretty long one depending on the kind of poem you're going to write and story. How about this? Next step, punctuation. If necessary, change it. You got a lot of free ride with this. You can do a lot of things here. Make modification in the tenses, possessives, plurals, punctuation, and capitalization. So you have a chance to do that. And add the words. You want to go ahead and be able to add a couple of words here and there. Next, watch this. You name your poem and you consider emphasis and you do some line spacing. Look at this line spacing. Space words out so they're poem-like. So you space words out so they are alone or run together. Keywords on lines by themselves. And then step 6, the notebook. Sign and date, and that source actually was a source that had to do with headline poems. The notebook, you sign and date, save all the fragments, combine some poems with other poems, and you have your notebook here. And folks, some of you who are self-publishers could write a series of poems over the next number of months, and you'd end up having something that would be publishable. So consider that. Now, let me give you a sample of some of my poetry. And I was working with this story a lot of years ago, and it was a Cinderella story. And I have a kitty cat, Kitty Cindy is a kitty cat Cinderella story. And you'll see some of the themes that are common to Cinderella stories. Cindy met Cat Prince and he asked her to dance. The magic slippers allowed her to prance. Kitty cat tidbits were served all around. Suddenly the clock struck a midnight sound. As she ran out, cats curtsied and bowed. Embarrassed, Kitty Cindy blushed and meowed. Out of the palace, down the steps she bound, leaving a single slipper soon to be found. Hope that kind of has you having fun here. Now, I want to shout out, Howard wrote a book called We're All Nuts. Howard Feigenbaum. Dietz, she has a book that, and she's a member of the Guild too, Good Morning Grump. Those are shouts out to the people who are in our Guild who have written them. I'm sorry if I forgot anybody. I want to stop here. And you're going to say, how does the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People end up in a presentation about children's books? But I want to talk about urgent and not urgent, and important and unimportant. You see, Stephen Covey, when he wrote the book, talked about the fact that if you spend your time on important, urgent matters, that is going to be so much more important than, for example, spending your time on unimportant, not urgent matters. But I want to turn this around. This is for prioritization in life and in your business. But let's talk about it in terms of what you have as a children's writer. You want to be writing the important things, and you want to be writing in the urgent sense to get your work to be out there for the public, instead of spending your time on unimportant, not urgent things. And so set your priorities that way. I want to let you know that there are other writers markets and agents and contests that you can get from Writers Market, magazines, including children's cookbooks. You've got craft books, search and find puzzles, jokes, single and books, plays and skits, and greeting cards. And I found all of these in Writers Market. I want you to know too that their Children's Writers and Illustrators Market is available 2020. And then there is the faith-based market. There's actually a whole Christian writers market. And I have a book that I recommend for the editing of any kind of book. And it's The Editing Secrets of Best-Selling Authors by Kathy I. That's been very helpful for me. And then a story spinner. And so you have an idea of a story spinner. Here it is, I'll hold it up. You've got the idea here that you've got different places. You've got a group of settings, you have a group of starters, you have a group of words, and then you have a whole group of recipes to be able to put them together. And this story spinner could be helpful for some of you who run out of ideas or want some new ways to go ahead and be creative in your writing. And then we started with C.S. Lewis. I want to come back to him, but J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were friends. They were in a writers group. If you're in a writers group and you can get some feedback, that's absolutely essential. In my opinion, I've been able to be involved in Jim Hitt's group for 3+ years here now, and been able to really benefit from getting iron to sharpen iron here. And I want to go ahead and, as I conclude here in the next few minutes, I want to share this book with you. This is of this poetry genre for a little bit older readers, but this is a book called A Long Way Down, and it's a book. I read some reviews on it, and one of the things it said is it says it is a book that is going to go ahead and look at a 5-second time period, and it is a decision. I'll go ahead and excuse me for 30 seconds so I can turn it off. Sorry. Cliffhanger, and that thing could have been ringing for a half hour here. The book is about the 5 seconds that a young person has to make a decision between picking up a gun and shooting the person who shot his brother. And so powerful. And here's the way this book starts on page 5. I don't know you, don't know your last name, if you got brothers or sisters or mothers or fathers or cousins that be like brothers and sisters or aunties or uncles, that be like mothers and fathers. But if the blood inside of you is on the inside of someone else, you never want to see it on the outside of them. The Acrobats. This is Where the Sidewalk Ends, Shel Silverstein. I'll swing by my ankles, shall cling to your knees as you hang by your nose from the high up trapeze. But just one thing, please, as we float through the breeze, don't sneeze. And this is my website in terms of trying to get a hold of me, DennisConradAuthor.com. But I want to go ahead and conclude with something here. Graveyards are filled with books that have never been written, that songs that have never been sung, poetry that has never been recited. Don't die with buried treasure. I would suggest that we all inspire before we expire. Have fun, folks, and love writing for children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Good job.
So we can open it up for questions now. What I'd suggest is if you can either raise your hand on the screen or just wave, and then we'll call on you one at a time. Who has a question? Anybody? Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
Dennis, you had so many good references and tools, and I mean, just a wealth of information for us. Is there, are you going to include that information in the, you mentioned that you were going to give me some notes or a handout or something like that. So I can attach it to the blog post on the website.
Great,
Like
thank
as
you.
a document, and so people can see that, because I'm very curious about some of the graphics and some of the tools. They're obviously you did a ton of research. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to make sure that there's no intention to have ever violated anybody's contract. A lot of these book covers are obviously protected. And so I'll be able to send over some kind of a list of things for everybody to refer to.
Great.
Next question.
We also have a question for Dennis about the presentation.
Dennis, I have a question for you. This is Ellen. So in terms of illustrators, who is illustrating your book?
My book happens to be with an agent right now, and the illustrator will be selected by the publisher. So that's the step that has to happen. But I want to be aware that there is a don't that I read about online. And the don't is, do not illustrate your own book unless you're a professional illustrator. That was one of the warnings that they said. Oftentimes people will have friends, but they're in the illustrators market or in the children's book, illustrators are the book. You can find illustrators to be able to help with your project.
I'd like to say something to kind of dovetail on that. That's even true if you're writing comic books or graphic novels, anything where there is illustrations. Unless you're the writer illustrator, they don't want to see them. In fact, if you present that with it, they may go, well, you've already done this. Since that looks self-published, we don't even want to work with you. So it's better not to hire an illustrator if you're a children's book or graphic artist or graphic novelist. That's what I've been told from people who make their living doing that.
I'd just like to add to that, I heard an agent say she loves to pair the author with an illustrator. So it's an extra bonus for them to put people together. So thank you.
I have a question. So Dennis, if a person was going to break into the children's writing market and they wanted to get started like with the greatest possibility of success, is there an age group that's the most likely to be sold?
One of the things that I'll tell you is last year, the research that I did is last year book sales went up 6% over the previous year.
Children's book?
No,
or all of them?
All of the books.
Okay.
But one of the things that I think you can do is you do not want to try to be following the market. If people are writing board books this month, that's not going to be where it is. You want to write what you love and make sure that you are purposeful and intentional about writing that. Have the book, and I will tell you, sometimes it takes a long time to get a publisher and to get everything put together. I'll give you an example. There's a lady, her last name is Mrs. Chow, and she wrote a book called about oceans, and it had to do with real life mermaids who are in South Korea. And she said, one of her messages, don't give up. I have been at this 12 years and finally my material started to hit. And so let me just ask, there's not like a fast, quick answer, but I want to tell you that as an agent, you can go to an agent, but you can also go to conferences. Conferences are outstanding for being able to get information where you are hearing a person who's the agent or getting a publisher. I went to a recent conference and the publisher said, acquisitions editor said, please send me your documentation. You've been at this conference. I'll trust your work. It might take me 8 weeks to get back to you, but it's going to be sooner than 3 months. And so that is what I can tell you. And they were accepting all levels. Now, I will tell you that as I said earlier, the board book market may have more of a person who will get a book and then they'll do a board book at the same time. I know that agents and publishers are always looking for the next best thing. And that's why there are some guidelines, but be encouraged.
Thank you, Dennis. Howard has a question.
We have a question in the chat. Lynette, did you want to ask your question or do you want me to read it? I don't see her, so. Okay, so Lynette asks, is it okay to send sketches for suggestions for illustrations?
Good question.
That's the answer you just gave, Michelle. And I would say not. I would say make sure that you're really going to go ahead and let the illustrator work with it. And if you have illustration ideas, make sure they end up in the text so that can be conveyed to the artist who's going to be doing them. Howard?
Howard has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. For those people who don't find publishers or find it difficult to wait 12 years to get their work noticed, I would encourage them to consider self-publishing. And the reason is, in 2007, I was reading Nature Photography magazine, and I read about a couple in Michigan who built a snowman in the woods and then used time-lapse photography to see what went on when they weren't there. And there were all kinds of animals coming around the snowman. And they used their photographs to then make a children's book. And it was before we had all of these wonderful online ways of publishing. They printed up enough copies and they sold it themselves to the people they knew and around them. And they ended up making $1 million from that effort, and had nothing to do with the publisher. So, and that inspired me. I was taking a course on how to use, a Mac computer to do photography. And I said, hey, I do photographs. I can make a story too. And I went to the supermarket. I bought a whole bunch of different kinds of nuts, and I took photographs of them, and I made a story about that. So, and it's still being bought. It's still online, and it had nothing to do with the publisher. And even when I had to do an illustration that had nothing to do with a photograph, I did it on the computer. I used a ruler to make a straight line, and it worked out okay. So it's not, professional by any means, but my thought was it doesn't have to be exactly professional if the story carries the book. So I would encourage people who who want to just try it even, and see what you come up with, and don't necessarily be put off by the fact that a publisher has to approve it.
Absolutely, Howard. I really agree with you. And I think you are a perfect example. And thank you for sharing that information.
Karen has a question.
I wrote a couple of children's books and did some just what somebody else asked. Can you do an illustration just to tell them what you think the illustration should be? And that may have been a mistake now that I think about it, but you said if you have a suggestion, put it in the text. What did you mean by that?
Oh, that was what I was talking about in the 2-cent piece I mentioned a few minutes ago, that the illustrator note, if you can go ahead and instead of me writing about pushing the coins back and forth or on the table, actually put a line in the text that says, and he pushed the coin to the person or to the mom, that becomes more powerful. And then an illustrator can look at it and be able to get the idea to be able to illustrate it. But I want to tell you, if you're working with an illustrator that you're hiring because you're a self-publisher, then you might want to go ahead and draw some kind of sketches or storyboard that would follow for your book. That might work if you're going to do self-publishing, Karen. Thanks.
No, I just gave up.
Oh, don't give up. That's the message.
That's an option. The other thing that I wanted to make note of, you mentioned that somebody had written a children's book and the kids said, oh, that's bullying, which I thought was pretty interesting because when you think back to the nursery rhymes and stuff that we read as kids, there were ogres eating kids and witches putting them in ovens and all kinds of stuff. And now it's socially unacceptable to do any of that. So it's kind of interesting.
I agree.
I actually have a nursery rhyme book, a Mother Goose nursery rhyme book from 1944 that was banned because Humpty looks like, oh my gosh.
Winston Churchill?
No. Who was the guy? Oh, this is terrible. The name is, it's not Stalin. Who was the other guy?
Benito Mussolini.
Lenin.
Hitler.
Hitler.
Oh.
Yeah, because he's got the little mustache like Hitler, and that book was banned. And I figure one of these days it'll be worth $1 million.
I have a short little doohickey on the whole bullying thing. Bullying is a fact of life, and I think sometimes that within literature we need to deal with the ugly as well as the pleasant. So I look at this as kind of a current trend of, oh, we don't want to offend anybody, but I think that this too shall pass, and we'll go back to comics and offending people again, which, you know, is kind of fun. But that being said, I absolutely credit Diary of a Wimpy Kid with getting my son, Liam, which many of you know, over the hump, who is now a writer as well, over the hump of reading. He didn't want to read. He only read under duress, only read what was assigned, required stuff. And then I bought him Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And it was so heartening as a parent to watch him follow me around the house trying to read me passages out of it because he loved it, because he could relate, because he was an 11-year-old boy who was just starting that journey into middle school, and everything that author wrote in that book, good, bad, and ugly, he personally could relate to. And that was so powerful that to this day, he's not only an avid reader, you know, he's got his own, you know, in his early 20s now, he's got an Audible subscription, constantly listening to books on tape when he can't physically read. He reads more than I do. So, you know, hey, the bullying, that was what made it relatable, because that's middle school. So I think we shouldn't milk toast and dilute down reality. In fact, I love that opening you read, Dennis, of that book. How powerful was that about the blood on the inside, the blood on the outside? That's powerful, very visual, not very pleasant subject matter, and yet it needs to be out there. That's my take.
Yeah.
I just want to throw in something about illustrations if you are going to self-publish. Somebody told me about a website called Fiverr, Fiverr, and it is, I think, over just hundreds of illustrators who will illustrate your book for you, and they offer their prices. They're priced from beginner to more professional, but it's a place to perhaps consult if you are wanting to do your own illustrations.
I would like to say that Fiverr can be wonderful, but it also has some poorly qualified people on it. And so I don't know how you vet the people on Fiverr, but it can be, you know, it can be a real source of help, or it can be a waste of money. I had somebody format for me, and I don't know how I vetted this person because it was a while back. But when I asked him to do a watermark kind of thing for my chapter titles, it was supposed to be just like three little waves of gray at the chapter title. And instead, he put in the name and my name, the name of the book and the author's name on every page, like sideways with a gray imprint, like a draft that you would send memo around, corporate draft, you know, that says, you know, draft. He thought that's what a watermark was. And I ended up arguing with this guy, you know, like a little bit. And then I realized he was not somebody I cared about. I was afraid of him, frankly. He was scary. I paid him and I got off the network.
Okay.
So you can be dealing with some real creepazoids on Fiverr.
Thank you.
There are other better commonly sourced websites for that.
I'd like to point out, when I was teaching, first of all, I really believe that children's books are great if the parents are there at an early age to start the reading process. But when I was teaching high school, I had so many students whose parents never read to them. Perhaps they couldn't read, I don't know. But interestingly enough, I would get students who were like juniors and seniors in high school who literally had never read a book.
Wow.
And I could turn some of them on by giving them, of all things, a Louis L'Amour book. And for girls, a Mary Stewart book. So, and as an adult, I yeah, I read some Louis L'Amour, but uh, these were popular writers, and so in high school there was a chance to save people here that were not writers, readers rather, by giving them the proper book, and they could struggle through with it and love it. And both times many times I'd have give this kid a Louis L'Amour book or the Mary Stuart book, and they would come back and want more, which was always a good sign. I would like to point out too, and Dennis was saying about the lengths of books are great because I think they're really right on, except in the Harry Potter series where her final books were up in the 800, 900 page for the Harry Potter series, which was very unusual. When you say so, Dennis?
I say that it was unusual, and kids love them. And so that would have been an impediment to a lot of publishers who would have not wanted to take a risk on that. I wanted to go ahead and just share something, a list of do's that I got from one of my editors, Linda Harris. And one of the things she wrote back, if I can go ahead and transition to that, is that okay, Jim?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, yeah. She said, know the specifics of writing for children. It's a lot different than writing for adults. She says, read lots of children's books, especially the kind you want to write. And that answers your question too, Lynn, about wanting to make sure that we come up with things that'll be popular ultimately. And then spend time with children to get to know what they like, and have a few beta readers who are children who will give you honest feedback. And then finally, pay attention to vocabulary. And she has a book that she recommends. And I was talking a little bit about grade level and how you do this. She said, get a copy of the Children Writers Word Book, and that'll help you with regard to that. So be encouraged. And I'm just so glad I could be here today. I want to share this with you. Here is The Very Hungry Caterpillar. And this book, when you open it up, actually has all these little holes. And the holes are where where the worm is ate through, and it just keeps going. So it's very fun and humorous, but it's light, and it ends with a butterfly transition. So it's quite a book that appeals to kids, and I've been able to find that out from talking to people.
Karen, did you have another question?
Oh, I was just going to say, I always had trouble with reading, and they didn't discover I had double vision until I was 17. But when I started college, one of the classes I had to take was children's literature, and we were supposed to read 200 easy and alphabet books. And that was the most exciting thing I think I ever did reading wise, because they were A is for apple, B is for ball, etc. And I could just zoom through those like crazy, and it improved my reading somewhat. And I think sometimes when we're helping a slow learner, we need to back up a little bit and give them a bunch of those really easy books so that they can feel that confidence grow in their reading ability. That's my 2 cents worth. There you go.
Anybody else have something?
I'll just say early in my career, I did have a chance to help some kids to read, and I was using something called Perceptual Integration Reading Kit. And it's out of print now, but the lady Lynn Shippey had really invented something that was kind of a precursor to Hooked on Phonics. And so you have AT, but then you have pat, cat, hat, and all of the other words. They were grouped together, and kids would work with them and write them out and what have you. So I got a lot of experience in writing with really tight, small words. The other thing was, and that just has been kind of by osmosis, the other thing is that when I was writing for these short and sweet books, and there are opportunities to write for publication through them, that short and sweet book process required that I write things in one syllable. And so I had to do one syllable personal essays all the way through, except for words that are not going to be reducible to something. So, but it was really challenging. But at that time, it's really honed my skill as a children's writer. So hopefully you have some experience or opportunity to really practice some of that.
Anybody else?
I have one thing. When I was teaching history and government and psych and that, all that, I always was putting books on that I had read or I'd heard about on the board, so that it wasn't just English classes that they were getting information about reading. And I turned quite a few girls on to Isabel Allende, and you know, that was always great when they came and they wanted to discuss the book with me. And so I don't know if enough teachers do that. I mean, English teachers obviously, but they're, you know, you're an educated person, so you can share other things with kids except for the curriculum that you're doing, you know.
Anything else? Any last words, Dennis?
No, I want to thank you again for allowing me to speak, and just contact me if you have any questions.
Did a great job, Dennis. We appreciate it very much. It was terrific and very enlightening and entertaining. So, hey, you hit all the right points. What can I tell you? All right. Lynn is needs to tell us who's going to speak next month.
I just wanted to say, Dennis, I'll be looking forward to getting that attachment from you, and then I'll post it on the blog within a couple of days. And if you guys aren't signed up to receive, if you're not subscribed to the Diamond Valley Writers Guild blog posts, it's dvwritersguild.org, and it's the home page. So all you got to do is sign up there, and you will get recaps of the meetings, which is kind of helpful. Also, it just kind of cracked me up when we all did this. Kind of all looked like it's flippers, you know. Okay, our next month's speaker on Saturday, July 24th will be Mary St. John Putnam. Now, Mary is a very interesting person. She's not an author herself, but she knows an awful lot about marketing, and she is going to talk with us about outside the box book marketing. Her special take is that she used to be a data analyst for Amazon. She worked inside the beast. So I can't wait to pick her brain about that kind of thing. But she has been a TEDx speaker and also has done presentations for the Southern California Writers Conference on her outside the box book marketing topic. And her table of contents that I'm looking at here is how to use a website, social media, brand platform, gifts and giveaways, online tools and other tips, networking, reviews, awards and contests, and what have you. So and she's also just PS married to the author David Putnam, who I'm sure most of you know. He has had some real hits on his hand with his police procedurals and detective stories. So she has helped market him and has seen the sausage being made firsthand. So anyway, she will be with us again on Zoom at our next meeting in July.
Thank you, Lynn. I have one last quick announcement here. I hope somebody in here is really considering running for president. My term is up coming in October, as is it Joe's for treasurer? Is that correct? I believe.
Yes, yes.
So we have two positions opening up. I will not be running for president again. I hope that somebody out there is really considering it and carrying along. Lynn has made the presidency really easy. And if you need help from me, I'll be glad to give it too. It's not a difficult job. You just have to do a few things here and there. So anybody who's interested, please keep that in mind. Our treasurer, and Lynn has Joe has simplified the treasurer's job, and her reports are very simple, and she's doing a great job. But she's not going to run either. So we have those two openings. So please consider yourself if you'd like to run for either one. With that, I would like to once again thank Dennis for his presentation, and it was terrific. And excellent job. And we will see all of you hopefully in a month. All right.
Okay. See ya.
Bye, everybody.